Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Croplife Retail Week. Paul Schrimpf with Eric Sfiligoj here. Welcome, Eric.
Hello, Paul.
So not much happening this week. We got, a new president, new administration. Otherwise, business as usual, right?
Well, kind of. We do have some news to share. I guess we'll start out with something regarding China, because we talk about China a lot on this program. Mostly have been lately, it's had to do with the amount of corn and soybean from the U.S. that China was buying throughout 2020 and is expected to continue to buy here in 2021. But this one, I guess, is more of you'll have to take this with a little grain of salt, because when I first saw the headline for this story, I'm like, wow, that's major news. But then when I read the details, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. So anyhow, our friends in China, Paul, recently have approved two biotech corn varieties, one from Bayer and one from Syngenta. So on the surface, you would think, hey, great, China is getting into biotech crops. But if you read the article that's online, these varieties are being approved as for animal feed purposes only in the country. And that's to help China. You remember about a year and a half ago, they were having the African swine flu epidemic that wiped out about half their hog herd in the country. But now they're trying to rebuild that. And obviously the hogs need some feed. So these two new corn varieties will help do that. So.
Yeah, well, they'll do what they need to do to meet the need, I guess.
Amen. Amen. So now I have a quiz for you. You always love these.
Yeah, it's always awesome. Can't wait.
Yes. All right, Paul. Yeah, I'm going to hit you with a number. You tell me what it is representative of. 24.
24.
Don't say the number of hours in a day. That's just too easy.
No, I wouldn't do that. I think if I had equated it to something I've eaten or eaten too much of, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So why don't you go ahead and tell me?
All right. Well, 24. Okay. Now this one's going to get a little complicated because it's repetitive. It shows up 3 times. So I was reading a report from the Renewable Fuels Association. As you might remember, the demand for ethanol, because of all the stay-at-home orders we had in 2020, was down for the year, and folks were expecting that as we got into 2021, a new year, that maybe ethanol demand would start going back up. But RFA said in a recent report that as of now, 24 ethanol plants in the US are currently idled, and 24 other plants are running at reduced capacity. So those are 2 of the 24s that I hit you with. And given that the estimated number of ethanol plants in total in the US is 200, that would be 24% of the ethanol plants are either under capacity or offline at the moment. So there you go, with 3 bits of the number 24 showing up in one news story, which I thought was very interesting.
Very interesting, and only something you would find, I think, probably. Certainly, ethanol is just, boy, it's I think it's going to be problematic, combined with, the trade, that we rely on so heavily, and we're never sure how that's going to play out. It's hard. It's just so hard to rely on things that are just so out of our control. It makes it difficult to build business plans, to really to feel confident in where it's headed. But I mean, optimism's still reigning pretty high, especially among retailers and growers, with farm income being what it is and the fall being what it was, and I think the outlook's still pretty positive. But it's just still, you wonder if the foundation's just if it's really strong enough to feel confident about going forward. It's, I don't know. It's such a tough industry.
Well, and I know the article I was reading talking about this mentioned, we mentioned a video or 2 ago about the fact that because the carryover was lower than expected, corn prices have been going up. And according to this article, the fact that corn prices are rising now is actually going to hurt ethanol even maybe further going forward here in 2021, because it's going to be more expensive for the ethanol plants to actually buy the corn they need to make ethanol. So it could, good news for some people and bad news for others. I guess, that's the yin and yang you get in economics, no matter if it's ag or not. So.
Yep, absolutely. So anything else, sir?
Well, one other thing, just a little tidbit kind of I thought was interesting. Our friends at the European Crop Protection Association have decided to, it's a new year, so they've decided to come up with a new name for their association. So Paul, say goodbye to ECPA and say hello to Croplife Europe. The reason I bring that up is I know that for years and years since we're Croplife Magazine, I tend to get calls from people wanting to join Croplife America, the trade group, which we are not associated with in any way, shape, or form. I'm curious how many people now from Germany, Belgium, or maybe Italy will be calling me wondering how they join Croplife Europe. So we'll have to see. If you start getting European phone numbers on your phone show up, that's what's happening here, Paul. They're confusing us again.
Well, certainly let's hope not. I mean, that's a confusion that we have the name sharing agreement, but it's certainly a bit of a confusion that we've dealt with over the years. Unfortunately, as much as we appreciate our friends over at Croplife America and everything that they do in the crop protection market, it's certainly been difficult at times, but yeah, well, I guess welcome to the family. I don't know. Welcome to the welcome cousins, whatever. I don't know, brand cousins. Interesting. Well, thanks for making. I hadn't heard that, so thanks for noting that. That's interesting.
Yeah. No, my pleasure.
One other tidbit. We had a gentleman named Kyle Wellborn who's from St. Louis group called the Yield Lab, and he's contributing some articles to us and focused on kind of venture capital and where it's headed. And it was interesting. His analysis was that COVID really pushed a lot of investment into existing late stage kinds of companies. So that's why you saw, I think, folks like FBN and Indigo and others getting that money and getting a lot of it was because, and that's my take on it, is because people were going with what they thought was a safer bet rather than the early stage or entry level kinds of venture capital ideas. But he expects when COVID wraps up, assuming it's going to wrap up here in the next 3 to 4 or 5 months, by mid to end of 2021, we'll see a lot more investment in some of those early stage technologies. So we may see more of that money kind of rolling back into ideas in our market, come through the end of this year. But it's just kind of interesting that it had that kind of impact that I hadn't really realized.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, we'll have to be keeping an eye on that as we go forward here in 2021.
Yep, that story's on the line, and of course, like I said, we'll be getting stories from him throughout the year. So we'll look forward to more of his perspective.
I'll be looking forward to reading a few of those.
Very good. All right, well, that's it for this edition. That's it for this edition of Croplife Retail Week. I'll say that slowly. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below.
Your feedback is important to us. We'll try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode.
And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.